Hey, welcome everybody. Jon Clay, VP of Threat Intelligence here at Trend Micro, and welcome to my monthly threat webinar. This is the November-December 2022 webinar. I'm going to be talking about our 2023 security predictions report. So if you're not familiar, Trend does about three major reports every year. One is a mid-year report, which we published not too long ago. We do a full year report, usually comes out in the first quarter of each year. And then we also do a predictions report, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Hope everybody's having a good day. I do not have my video on. I sprained my ankle last night, and so I'm got a little bit of a setup here trying to get that healed. And so I thought it'd be best not to have you guys see me in that environment. So any case, all good. If you have questions, feel free to put those in the QA or the chat. I'll try to answer those at the end of this, but why don't we get started? So the report itself is named Future Tense. This is our 2023 security predictions. So it's intended to help organizations and people to understand what our threat researchers think is going to happen in 2023. And I'll give you some items. I'm not going to go into as much detail as the report. So if you want to get those details, certainly download the report. It's available on our website, trendmicro.com. Go to the research section and you'll be able to find it right there. But future tense, the reason we name this as future tense is that as we know, we're kind of coming out of the pandemic days, hopefully, keep our fingers crossed. But a lot of organizations have shifted and changed quite dramatically over the course of the last 2 years, 3 years. And so it's going to put a strain on a lot of organizations as they try to deal with a lot of the shifts and changes that have had to be made as part of their network infrastructure and security infrastructure as they go around. Also, we are seeing, obviously, with cyber warfare. Well, the Russian-Ukrainian conflict has certainly had some issues going on, and certainly there are a lot of attacks that are going on both on Ukraine as well as on Russia, and it's spilling over a little bit into other areas. We've got a number of things also going on around the world that obviously global recession that is expected to hit and maybe even increase in 2023 that could obviously have issues for a lot of organizations, whether it's budget cuts or employee cuts or whatever it might be. So, which is unfortunate. But in any case, we'll get past all this stuff and we'll move ahead as we always do as a society. But let's go into these. The first prediction we have is inconsistent application of cloud technology will hurt enterprises as adoption of new tools picks up pace. So you can see and one of the things that we have witnessed with the pandemic was a shift to cloud. A lot of organizations have shifted to public clouds. We're starting to see more organizations shifting to a hybrid cloud model. But one of the things that we've been tracking certainly are misconfigurations of cloud technology. And part of that is because, as you see in the middle here, there's 2,000 plus services and features in AWS. That's a lot of features, functionality for people to not only utilize, but also understand the ramifications of installing a new service and what are the security components that could come with that. And threat, the attack surface is growing dramatically because of all these new technologies that are coming on. Technology's pace has always been a challenge for a lot of businesses and organizations because we try to adopt that new technology as quickly as possible in many cases, but it can cause challenges for a lot of business. And we're seeing that with the misconfigurations of cloud applications on a regular basis. If you look in our mid-year report, we actually listed out a number of services that had misconfiguration rates anywhere from above 60 to 100%. across AWS, across Azure, and across Google Cloud. So that's going to continue to be a challenge for a lot of businesses as they still continue to adopt cloud technology in the future. In 2023, we expect that adoption is not going to go down. We think it'll actually pick up pace. One of the things that we've talked about quite often is a concept called living off the land. This is a tactic that malicious actors use where they will utilize a lot of the same tools that you're using inside your organization to hide themselves. So we've seen the use of PS Exec, we've seen the use of Cobalt Strike, we've seen the use of a number of these tools that are in many cases used legitimately inside organizations, but are used illegitimately by the malicious actors. And so we think in 2023, we're going to start seeing this same concept, but applied to the cloud. So it's called living off the cloud attacks, where they're going to use the tools that you're using in cloud, whether it's to manage cloud or create cloud items, that they're going to use those same tools to hide their tracks as they try to utilize those tools in a malicious way. So that's another area we're going to have to deal with as defenders in 2023 is that cloud tool going to be being used in a legitimate way or an illegitimate way? And so that's a challenge that we're going to have. So in any case, so cloud certainly is going to be a challenge in 2023. The adoption is going to definitely continue to increase. But organizations are going to have to look at the adoption of those new cloud technologies and applications and ensure they have a good understanding of them, but also the ramifications of, if I misconfigure a feature, does it open me up to a threat or open me up to attack? And that's going to be an area that you're going to have to deal with. The next one is shape-shifting ransomware business models will become a bigger avenue for data theft and blackmail. And, this is an interesting one because certainly ransomware is the threat that we've been dealing with for a long, long time. It has changed over time, certainly. In fact, it even started before Bitcoin. And, a lot of people think about cryptocurrencies as the challenge because the criminals are using cryptocurrencies to hide their revenue and stuff. But ransomware actually used other methods of financial payment in the past. So, and then the idea that, more threats come, it increases, the ransomware increases when Bitcoin goes up and it decreases when Bitcoin goes down is really a misnomer. It doesn't happen. We haven't seen that happen. One of the things we are envisioning in 2023, though, is that the ransomware actor groups may definitely shift their models. They may even get out of the encryption model altogether and go for other extortion type of attacks, where they will steal valuable data and sell it, either ransom it to you, saying that they won't use it if you pay them an extortion fee. Since they typically are going to do the stealing of your data before they do a ransomware attack. But that is going to probably shift. And the reason that we're going to probably see that is some good news. We think that the defenders yourselves are getting much better at detecting the actual ransomware component of an attack. So if you're using machine learning or artificial intelligence scanning technology, those are pretty good today of detecting a ransomware executable when it kicks off. You have technology behavior monitoring that can detect when a number of files get encrypted in a short period of time, which is the common behavior of a ransomware attack. And so we can block those ransomware components fairly good today. So we think that a lot of attackers are going to, and groups are going to shift back to the more tried and true extortion models. And you can see some of these groups are getting very sophisticated. On the left, you can see the Conti org chart when that was leaked as part of the Conti leak. And you can see some of the amounts that they were paying for headcount, 82 headcounts as part of that group. That's going to cause us some challenges in the future as these underground groups get and cyber criminal groups get much more sophisticated. We're also seeing in the underground a lot more of the expert services being offered and multiple services being offered where groups will come together as part of an attack. And so you likely will not see only a single group inside your organization during an attack campaign against you. It might be multiple groups that are doing different things as part of the attack process. You can also see on the right-hand side, we do think that the non-traditional Windows devices are going to start being targeted by these groups. So Linux, and again, this is where cloud comes in. We're going to see more cloud ransomware attacks in 23 than we saw in the past as well. And then the bottom image, the reason I put that in there is I think you're going to see more of these groups doing a destructive attacks and where they are going to destroy or loot an organization as part of the attack. So for example, if they're going to loot you for the data that they want to obtain that can help them profit, whether selling in the underground to other actors who want to use that data or extorting you. But the destructive side may come about if you decide not to pay them. So what they may end up doing as a last resort, if they're upset that you will not pay them an extortion fee or a ransomware fee, they may end up going to the destructive model and drop a bunch of wipers or something into your network to put you at risk there. So certainly this ransomware will continue in 23, but we do think that a number of these groups are going to do a little bit of a shift. Let's see. The enterprise perimeter will expand into the home as users become more comfortable in a hybrid work environment. So we obviously learned as part of the pandemic when everybody had to work from home that it does work. And this hybrid model is probably here to stay. A lot of businesses, while we're hearing, that some businesses are requiring employees to come back into the office, not everybody is following that model and are going to continue to allow employees to work in a hybrid environment. With that said, we are seeing a lot more of the malicious actors targeting home networks, targeting remote employees. In fact, there was a research done by IBM and Honeyman that showed that organizations that had a higher percentage of remote workers actually had higher costs due to data breaches than those that didn't have it, which, certainly that is likely, but it is something you're going to have to contend with. One of the things we are likely to see in 23 is more island hopping from and that's basically lateral movement from the home network employees system network into the corporate network, whether that's through, infecting their corporate device, and when they bring it into the corporate network, it gets into the corporate network that way, or they're compromising the communication channel between the home network and the corporate network. In early 21, we saw a 2,000% increase in attacks against VPN out there as part of as the pandemic was going on. So certainly the threat actors know this. If you look at some of the data that I share on this screen, you'll notice this comes from our smart home network device that is in millions of homes around the world. And these are the different types of attacks that we're seeing against home networks. So Trend Micro, if you're not familiar with us, we have a consumer side of our business where we have millions of customers in this space. And one of our products is a home network scanner. So it scans your home network for both inbound and outbound for threats that are targeting the home network. And you can see some of the device types that we had in both outbound and inbound. So you see Desktop laptops obviously are the biggest one, but you see smartphones, routers, Android devices, smart TVs, printers, game consoles, tablets. All of those devices are looking to be targeted by the criminals. And the interesting one is you see outbound. These are devices that are probably already compromised and are being used to launch attacks outside of the home, back out to the public, the general public. And so you see in the middle slide, these are the monthly attack events that we see in general. So you're looking at upwards of 250,000 or million, 250 million attacks against home networks. So certainly the home, the perimeter that you're going to have to deal with as defenders is definitely moving. And the challenge is obviously you don't own that home network and most of the devices there. So you can't secure those using your traditional tools and policies and procedures and processes. So that's going to continue to be a challenge for a lot of organizations. So that's where maybe looking for those security vendors that can help both in a commercial space as well as a consumer space. The next one is social engineering is an evergreen threat that will continue to reach across industry lines and user bases as attackers adopt new technology like deepfakes. So interesting enough, I just saw an article that China is implementing some new safeguards to deal with deepfakes, that anybody who has software that can create deepfakes has to register that software with the Chinese government. The interesting thing, we just published a report recently or an article recently about how the underground groups are using stolen identities and deep fakes today. Social engineering is certainly one of the biggest tactics that the criminals utilize. You can see I've done in the past, I've done stuff where I mentioned about why targeting people. You can see some of the reasons why they target people. People and your employees will still continue to be a prime target for these malicious actor groups. And the use of social engineering is not going to go away. It's going to continue to be done. And like we are saying here, they may utilize some of the newer technologies to fool people. Business email compromise is a threat that if you looked at the 2021 report by the FBI, their IC3 threat report, BEC was the biggest threat that was targeting businesses out there in the world. And that threat, we think, is definitely going to continue. And one of the ways that they can make it more lifelike is to utilize deepfakes. In fact, we've seen this in being used in the wild already, where you had phone calls purporting to come from the CEO in their voice, saying, you need to transfer funds to this account. Video we will see being utilized as well as part of this. So the social engineering tactic will continue, but there will be some shifts in how that is delivered to the victims. And so that's what we are definitely expecting to see here in the future. And one of the other research reports we just published was one around biometrics and how your fingerprints, your facial recognition, your irises could be pulled from pictures that you have on the internet. If you haven't seen that research, again, go to our research section of our site. We definitely think, because of the camera technology that is getting better and better all the time, that the likelihood that biometric data will be stolen by malicious actors and utilized in ways that we may not expect it to be used today. So that's another area that could cause concern, as biometrics have been a staple for security in the past. And so we may have to look at new ways to secure or identify who you are as a person. This next one's kind of interesting. The hype surrounding digital novelties like NFTs and the Metaverse will keep waning, but the blockchain technology on which they're built is going to be where the real action is. So, you can see on the left, I pulled this picture from Sotheby's. It's probably a good representation of what people are doing about NFTs today. If you looked at the amount of money spent on NFTs has dramatically dropped since last year and even since earlier this year. We do think that NFTs are probably going to definitely continue to drop. I think as people learn more and more about that technology and what it represents and how it's represented, we'll probably see less and less. The Metaverse, we actually did a report recently about Metaverse. We call it Metaverse. We talk about the dark verse, which is where we expect a lot of the criminals, not a lot, I will say some criminals will play in the dark verse. But because that technology isn't gaining traction as much, we don't expect there to be a lot of security attacks and items in the security area in that space in 23. What we will see, though, is continued attacks against blockchain and against the cryptocurrency exchanges. North Korea has done a really good job of targeting cryptocurrency exchanges and getting hundreds of millions of dollars of stolen crypto for the regime there. So we will continue to see increases of that. Bitcoin seems to be stabilizing around 20,000 or 18,000. And a lot of people are still utilizing and still holding their Bitcoins in hopes that it will continue to rise. So we do expect that criminals, if you do own cryptocurrencies, that they will continue to be targeted by the malicious actors. They will also continue to use Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies as part of their extortion fees and how they get paid by it. But we do expect that they will move that money essentially from the crypto into regular fiat currencies fairly quickly, because they're concerned about the drops, that the increase in decreases that we've seen, the volatility that we've seen in cryptocurrency prices. So we expect that they will shift it and move that money very quickly out of crypto into fiat money. But some of the areas we do see potential improvements with blockchain, document fraud, establishing trust where there hasn't historically been a single source of trust on the internet, public ledgers, smart contracts. Those areas we definitely think blockchain will be a support. But certainly this is an area that I don't think a lot of businesses are going to have to worry about too much next year, unless you hold a very large amount of crypto in your organization. Another one that we have: attackers will further capitalize on vulnerabilities and intrude through overlooked attack surfaces like open source software. So certainly we will see continued use of exploits of vulnerabilities, of known vulnerabilities in the world. We just wrapped up another round of our 0-day initiatives Pawn to Own event. We do 3 of these events every year, and this last one last week was in Toronto, where we actually looked at work from home applications and devices. And we had a number of, I think 64 or 65 confirmed vulnerabilities, 0 days that were submitted through that event, that are now in the hands of the vendors who are working now to patch those. So the good news is we're taking those vulnerabilities off the table and that could potentially be used by malicious actors. But they were looking at routers, they were looking at printers, they were looking at applications in the Soho area. But another area that we are concerned about is open source software. As more and more businesses are creating applications or utilizing cloud applications that utilize third source software, the challenge obviously is that if a vulnerability is found in that open source and exploited in a fashion by the malicious actors, the ability to quickly update that open source code is going to be a challenge. SBOMs are definitely going to be seen. SBOMs, if you're not familiar, are software bill of materials, which basically means you have a piece of software that you use in your organization, and SBOM will give you all of the third-party or open source applications that are included in that software application. And so you would be able to identify faster that you have, excuse me, that you have some challenges with that application. You need to get that software patched. So certainly that's going to be a challenge. End days, though, we published a report not too long ago on the buying and selling of end day vulnerabilities in the cyber criminal underground. In fact, we're seeing enterprising cyber criminals and coders who are creating these end day vulnerabilities or exploits and selling them in the underground. Microsoft is, you can see here, some of the prices that we see in some of the affected products being sold. So you can, they're selling Microsoft Office vulnerabilities or exploits for anywhere from $35 to $500. RDP from $200 and up. WinRAR, you can see up to $10,000 for an exploit are being sold in the underground. Same with Microsoft Windows. So certainly there is a budding service and offering sales of end-day exploits in the underground market for people. And the fact that we saw a number of 0 days being used and I think we're going to see more 0 days used in 23 than we saw in 22. In fact, one of the things that Google Project Zero tracks the use of 0 days in attacks against organizations or in the wild attacks. And in the first half, they had, I think it was 18 0 days used in attacks. So it doesn't sound like a big number, but one of the challenges that they found was 9 of those were actually variants of original patches that had been exploited by these cyber criminals. So what they did is they reverse engineered the patch and found some gaps, some holes in the patch that they could exploit still. And that's one of the things we did a talk, our 0 Day Initiative, which is our bug bounty program at Trend Micro. They did a talk at Black Hat this year about this actual problem. Organizations are being pressured to patch their vulnerabilities and bugs very quickly. And so one of the things we're starting to see is that these patches are not as robust as they need to be. And so the criminals realize this and they're starting to take advantage of it. So we're going to see that in 2023 more so than we have in the past. So certainly this is going to be an area where organizations are going to have to look at their patch management process and figure out a better method to identify which applications they need to patch quickly versus those that they can do at a later time. Another one, industrial entities will top off their tech stack, but struggle to keep up with staff shortages and vertical regulations. So this is where, if you look at the image in the bottom middle, this is where people talk about IT/OT convergence. We think that's a misnomer. They're not converging. IT and OT aren't converging. What we are seeing, though, is the OT network connecting to the IT network. And that's where the challenges are starting to arise. So in 2023, we're going to see more OT networks being compromised because of a attack against the IT network. And because it is connected, you will see a bleed over or a lateral movement from the IT network into the OT network. We're also going to see OT networks in and of themselves being targeted by the malicious actors. If I can bring down your industrial IoT or your manufacturing line, I can more likely extort you for getting that, those threats off of those machines very quickly by paying an extortion fee to the malicious actors who are doing that. We also are seeing certainly staff shortages in this area. We already know there's 3 million shortages in IT roles around the world, but OT is even worse probably. There's not many OT specialists and OT security specialists out there. And so we're going to continue to see some challenges in that space as we see that staff shortage happening. But we're also seeing on the other side, we are seeing some good news, which is more vertical regulations that are being put into place to help improve the security in the OT area and IIoT area and IT area. But this is where it's going to be a challenge, because as those regulations get put on, organizations are going to struggle adopting those regulations because they don't have the staff to deal with it. They don't have the knowledge to deal with those. So that's certainly going to be a problem. Artificial intelligence may help. We're starting to see more of that technology being deployed in this space, but it also can open up to some of the challenges where we're starting to see malicious actors actually looking to abuse artificial intelligence and machine learning models in the future. So that could also cause some challenges in 23 and beyond that we're going to see. And then the last one that we have is enterprises will veer away from the point solution approach to cybersecurity. So this is the paradigm shift that I've been talking about for quite a while now. In the past, a lot of organizations built their security model around the old castle, where you have one product running at the moat level layer. So you have a Symantec or a McAfee running at the outside area. You may have a Trend Micro or a Kaspersky running in a middle layer, and then you may have even a third vendor running in another layer. And the idea behind it, in the past, it was acceptable because in the past you used to have the threats used to be one to many. So it'd be a single threat that would target millions of computers. And if one vendor didn't have a pattern file for that, you might have a second vendor might have that pattern file, and that would be able to pick up the attack and block it. The challenge we have today is that most of these attacks are customized to each and every victim. And so the idea that each vendor will if a certain vendor will have a protection against that threat isn't likely anymore. The idea now is that you have to go on the premise that you have been successfully attacked. The attackers are already inside your network. Now the goal is, how can I identify the attackers inside my network quickly, and how can I get them out of my network just as quickly? And so this idea that you have this prevent, detect, analyze, respond model, where you have to have a good visibility around the entire attack life cycle and the attack chain. And if the previous approach worked, if you look on the bottom, this comes from our cyber risk index that we ran in the first half of this year, where 71% of organizations had a likelihood of a data breach in the next 12 months. That's of critical data, and 85% had a likelihood of a successful cyber attack in the next 12 months. So almost 9 out of 10 organizations expect to be successfully attacked in the future. So that certainly makes that idea that you have been successfully attacked, and now you have to deal with that. You have to identify the attack. You have to identify and get them out of your network. That's pretty high on the list. So the new paradigm is to maybe look at shifting to a different approach. And we're going to talk about that in the next section of it. But we definitely think organizations are starting to realize that traditional model that of running multiple vendors at different layers of the organization just doesn't seem to be working. And so they need a new approach, whether that's XDR or extended detection and response, or more of a platform approach. So let's talk about defense strategies. I wanted to give you some idea of where we are, Trend Micro is as an organization, and one of the reasons we can do a broad type of these research reports and the predictions go across a very broad layer is because of the amount of of threat intelligence that we obtain from customers and third-party intelligence sources that we obtain. Most of our intelligence comes from our solutions that are out there in 550,000 commercial customers, our 20 million consumer customers across the world. So we have solutions that are pulling threat intelligence from endpoints, and endpoints can be mobile devices, it can be IoT devices, industrial IoT, the smart home I talked about earlier, that device that's gathering threat intelligence for us in the consumer side. Cloud, we have, technology in the cloud, so we see the threats that are targeting cloud infrastructures. Our server technology, whether it's virtual servers, whether it's on-prem servers, database, data center servers, our technologies there. Email traffic that we're scanning. We have millions of customers that are doing email scanning. Industrial IoT I mentioned. Web traffic. We've got our web reputation technology that allows us to detect web traffic and threats. Command and control infrastructures. We even have researchers that simply look at command and control infrastructure, try to take those down and add those to our protection. Network and traffic lateral movement that we have. So our network scanners that are sitting inside the network and able to scan the network traffic for lateral movement, for malicious code that's or a worm maybe that's trying to propagate across it, or a ransomware attack, for example. All of this pulls in about 2.5 trillion events every day that we are then analyzing both through human intelligence and through automated intelligence that allows us to turn into blocking of these threats. So our research is very broad. It goes from cyber threats, vulnerabilities, targeted attacks across, through cloud to cyber criminal undergrounds in the future. And all of that research goes back into our R&D. So we have, about 4,000 people in a technical role inside Trend Micro. We have about 450 plus specific researchers that are researching the threats today. And then that in turn allows us to deliver threat intelligence and research to our customer base. So like the the research reports that we put out on a regular basis that you can find on our website. Also the responsibility disclosure. So our 0-day initiative that helps us help vendors responsibly disclose those vulnerabilities that cannot now be used in a 0-day attack. And then also public-private partnerships with law enforcement. We recently helped the Interpol with their African surge operation that they did in Africa to take down a number of infrastructures in Africa that were part of a criminal organizations, as well as some of the actual criminals themselves. So our threat intelligence helped them identify a lot of that infrastructure as well as the criminal actors out there. But my recommendation for you in terms of defense, I think you need to shift, like I said, that we need to shift left a lot, which in the attack chain. So that means let's not focus on the ransomware component of the attack. You're going to detect that. If you're using the latest technologies, the latest detection technology, the machine learnings, the behavior monitoring, the artificial intelligence, you'll detect that ransomware. Let's block it way before the ransomware component gets there. So let's look at initial access. Let's look at lateral movement. Let's look at, the places where they are going to start the attack and propagate the attack from inside your organization. And that's where attack surface risk management lifecycle is needed as an organization. So first, you need to discover your attack surface. A lot of organizations struggle with this. They don't know all of the open IPs that are open internet facing IPs that they have. Even if they do know those IPs, they may not realize that there's open ports or services, or there's vulnerabilities associated with that IP that the criminals can take advantage of. Even internally, they may not realize, they may not know that they have a number of servers that are not patched with the latest Exchange patch, for example, or Microsoft Windows patch, server patch that they need that is being exploited in the wild. So discovering that attack surface. And then once you do that, assess the risk. This is where you can, once you know that you have a device or an account that you need to look at, you can assess, is that account secure? Is it using multi-factor authentication, for example? Is it accessing a database that it shouldn't have access to? Or is it accessing applications or sections of the network that it shouldn't be accessing? So you can assess that risk. And then once you assess that risk, now you can start mitigating that risk through the proper security controls. And that those security controls definitely need to go across your entire network stack. So as I mentioned before, you need to have security at the endpoint layer, at the messaging layer, at the web layer, at the network layer, at the cloud layer. All of these areas need to be addressed, as well as your account layer, because a lot of account credentials are being compromised. So that, and this happens to be, this is continuous, and this is not something that's done once a year, once every 6 months, even once every week. This needs to be done constantly, continuously, and to allow you to give that visibility of the attack, because all of these attacks are going to start with initial access. Then they're going to map the network and laterally move across the network to the places that they need to be. And then ultimately, data exfiltration or ransomware drop or a wiper dropped into your network, depending on the motivation of the attacker. So look at, and as part of your 2023 process, I would recommend that you contact all of your security vendors and identify those that are able to, one, help you potentially reduce the number of tools. I think we did a research recently survey where on average there was about 46 security tools used by most large enterprises. Obviously that causes a very difficult process for a lot of people, a lot of different alerts that are going on. So can you consolidate? Secondly, talk to your security vendors to ensure you're using the latest versions of their products and that you have their latest technologies, defense technologies available and enabled and are being utilized. And then third, I think, certainly look at your people, process, and technology areas and see if you can improve or minimize the risks in those areas as an organization. So that's all I had today. If you want to contact us, we'd love to chat with you. I'm going to open up the chat to see if there's anything. I don't see anything in the chat right now, and I don't see any open questions. If you have a question, certainly feel free to drop it in the chat or put it into the Q&A button. I'll just wait just a little bit of time here. While we're waiting for anybody to put those in, I will let you know that I will continue this webinar series in 23. I think I'm going on my 8th or 9th year of running this monthly webinar series. So you can find all of those on our website. I have a repository that has all of the past webinars that I've done on demand that you can have. Certainly, you will receive a copy of the slides that I have presented today after this webinar is over, as well as a link to the on-demand version of the webinar that if you feel like sharing, I'd love it if you did. I'm still not seeing any questions, so I guess the audience is not asking questions today, but I want to thank everybody for attending. Again, you can download the full version of our predictions report from our website, trendmicro.com. Go to the research section and you'll see it there. But thank you very much for attending. I wish everybody a safe and healthy, happy holiday season, and we will talk to you again in 2023. Take care and have a great day. Bye-bye.